afternoon, everyone. If you could please take a seat, we're going to get started. My name is Jill Madsen, and I serve as the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Durham Chapel Hill. I'm so glad so many of you were able to join us for this important program today. This event is for you, our community. Since the Council's actions, we have continued to receive countless inquiries from our local Jewish community. People want to understand what the statement means and what the implications are. People are interested in knowing what we as the Federation are doing to organize and address the problematic nature of the statement. And people are left wondering what they can do. These are the questions we will be answering through various speakers we have gathered this afternoon. I'm honored to get things started by turning it over to our moderator today, Marcia Harris.
Thank you, Jill, and good afternoon. I'd like to join Jill in welcoming all of you here today. It's wonderful to see so many people interested in this important topic. And I want to thank the Durham and Chapel Hill Jewish Federation, as well as Voice for Israel, for coordinating and sponsoring this program. I know we probably have most people in the room that are at least somewhat aware that on April 16th, the Durham City Council passed a statement prohibiting military training of its police by any international country. And they singled out only Israel in terms of banning any type of police training. Now beyond that, we probably have a wide variety of folks in the room in terms of their knowledge about what happened, how it happened, why it happened, what efforts have been made and are continuing to be made to resist this statement. And that's why we're having the program today. Fortunately, we have a number of speakers that are going to help us become more informed about this topic. A couple of things about the format for the program today. So first of all, everyone is welcome here. We're glad to see so many of you. This program was planned by and planned for people that feel damaged by the Durham Council statement and that want to have it changed. And that is going to be the perspective of our speakers today. Now, I will introduce the speakers one at a time. They will talk for about 10 minutes. If you have questions, please, there are some cards available. If you haven't picked one up, there are folks that will walk through the audience and give you cards and pencils so you can write down your questions. We will address the questions at the end of the program after everyone has spoken. If you have a question for a particular panelist, please indicate that, or if it's a general question, you may indicate that too, or we'll just address it to anyone who feels comfortable answering it. The program is being videotaped, and the video will be available on the Voice for Israel website. All of the materials that will be referenced by speakers are also going to be available on the Voice for Israel website. So you may access those very shortly. Out of courtesy for the speakers, I would like to ask everyone to please turn off your cell phones, put away your cell phones and any electronics. As I said, the program will be videotaped, so you can go back to it and refer to it later. The last thing I would like to mention is we have a few guests that I would like to recognize today. Bishop James Blake, who is president of the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance. Bishop Blake, would you please stand so we can recognize you? Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Dr. Angela Birch, who is secretary of the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance. And we have Judy Rodriguez, who is with the Durham Fraternal Order of the Police. Thank you, Judy, for coming. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Adam Goldstein, who will be our first speaker.
Marcia. Over the past months, I have been reached by many, expressing concern about the City Council's actions. In my communications with the mayor, City Council members, HRC, media, I have shared two concerns that summarize what people have shared with me. One is, where was the representation from the broader Jewish community in making this decision? And two, understanding that this action did not happen in a vacuum. There have been many other anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist instances in this area that were a part of what brings people to concern. To communicate these concerns, I have synthesized from various forums this. The Jewish Federation of Durham Chapel Hill has played a vital place in the local Jewish community since the early 70s. We are an umbrella organization that includes the Levin Jewish Community Center, Jewish Family Services, the Jewish Community Foundation, the Israel Center, and Jewish Community Relations Council. Beyond our internal scope, we are also often seen as the umbrella organization for the community, working closely with our local congregations and other Jewish organizations. The blend of this ensures that we have the broadest reaching scope, embracing and supporting the local Jewish community, one of the fastest growing Jewish communities currently in the United States. The recent actions of the Durham City Council is of great concern to the Federation and the broader Jewish community. The number of emails, telephone calls, and meetings I have received in the past few months connected to this is astounding. One of the biggest concerns regarding the action the Council took was the absence of the larger, broader Jewish community voice. In other communities, when such a statement would be on the table that had correlation to the Jewish community, federations and rabbis are sought out to share insight and perspective representing the broader Jewish community. In case of the recent statement, neither happened. In fact, the complete opposite, as both the Federation and the local rabbis reached out with their concerns prior to the vote, and this was ignored. One has to wonder why this was. Was the broader Jewish perspective and voice not included because it contradicts the actions the Council took? The other question raised from the community is regarding why Israel even needed to be mentioned. The purpose and vision of the statement from the Council was to communicate the Council's vision for improving community relations between the police and residents, something we all support. Israel has nothing to do with this. If this event would have happened in isolation, community members may not have been concerned regarding the clear anti-Semitic presence in this action. But the event is not in isolation. During the Council meeting, when the statement was being discussed, anti-Semitic slurs were spouted by one of the speakers. In weeks following the Council's decision, anti-Semitic hate flyers were found around Durham. In just the past year and a half, the Jewish community campus was victim of a bomb threat, and there was no public response from the local government condemning such actions. This past fall, when there was threat of a KKK protest in downtown Durham, a local shul was forced to take precautions and remove the Torahs from its building and sending the staff home in preparation. Even these past winter months, with the terrible weather we experienced, community members with school-aged children can express their concern that once again the battle would be brought up about having makeup days on Shabbat. So when the majority of the Council supports a hateful petition singling out Israel, the Jewish homeland, and then the Council passes a watered-down version which still includes Israel, one cannot help but question if anti-Semitism is at play. These are the concerns that the local community has brought to me in countless emails, telephone calls, and meetings since this began. And this is why we are here today to discuss how we can move forward.
Thank you, Jill.
Greetings, my name is Adam Goldstein and I'm a local family physician, Jewish community leader. I've served in multiple local, state, and national Jewish organizations in leadership positions, including Day Schools Federation, Synagogue, and Hillel. 2 years ago, I was able to chair a community-wide anti-Semitism task force. And today's discussion is ostensibly about specific actions recently undertaken by the Durham City Council that have caused tremendous hurt to mainstream Jewish organizations and synagogues, and to thousands of individuals locally and internationally. To best understand this context, though, it's important to recognize two issues. One, according to the ADL, Anti-Defamation League's 2014 survey of 100 countries representing 4.2 billion people on Earth, 1 in 4 harbor anti-Semitic attitudes, including 21 million people in the United States. A commonly accepted definition of anti-Semitism adopted across the world is that a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. It imposes the entire blame when it relates to the country of Israel of many of the world's problems. So anti-Semitism may manifest itself in relation to Israel through actions which demonize or attempt to delegitimize because of Jewish identity. While there exist many anti-Israel, anti-Zionist initiatives that negatively impact the Jewish community, nationally and locally, one of the most important is boycott, divestment, and sanction. BDS. BDS seeks to selectively demonize and delegitimize Israel. Alan Dershowitz says its movement is highly immoral because it places the entire blame for the continuing Israeli occupation and settlement policy on Israelis. And it violates core principles of human rights. Almost all leading Jewish organizations in the world reject BDS because in singling out the Jewish state, it often opens the doors to anti-Semitic rhetoric and activities, and it highlights modern anti-Semitic double standards. Eric Fingerhook, President and CEO of Hillel International, says that BDS is divisive between Israeli and Palestinians and will not serve the goals of bringing people together. Both of these two issues recognize that criticism of Israel is not necessarily anti-Semitic, but that we, as owners of our own experience, can and will define those who selectively attack Israel through processes, words, and actions that attempt to demonize or delegitimize the only Jewish state on the planet. Israel is a democratic state that ranks in the top quartile in the world on democratic rights for citizens, minorities, women, LGBTQ. It's a beacon of light in a region that dwells in the bottom quartile of human rights for women's, LGBTQ, and minorities, and has tried repeatedly to destroy Israel for 70 years. With this context, we can begin to examine the actions by the Durham City Council. You will hear today about efforts starting in the fall of 2017 by organizations in the local community who supported BDS and have attempted to pass these types of resolutions broadly across educational, political, and religious organizations to pass a BDS petition, statement, and resolution by the Durham City Council. We became fully aware of this at the end of February 2017 when the Indy Weekly published an article about this effort saying that, quote, a coalition of local activist groups wants the city to pass a resolution condemning high-level exchanges between the U.S. and Israel because of Israeli security forces' records of human rights abuses, and because of claims of, quote, exchanging tactics about surveillance, exchanging tactics about repression, exchanging how best to racially profile people, so they both learn from each other how to do bad things to communities, end quote. These lies were in contrast to those who had actually attended these exchanges, including Durham Police Chief C.J. Davis, who attended a training when she was police chief in Atlanta, and advanced leadership training, including training on hate crimes and implicit bias. You will hear the origins, misrepresentations, and consequences of the final statement that the Durham City Council passed in April 2018, stating that the Durham City Council appreciated receipts of a memo from Police Chief C.J. Davis about the lack of any effort in Durham to participate in exchange with Israel, and that the Council affirmed that statement and opposed any exchanges with any country in which Durham officers received military-style training. You will hear Jewish leaders representing Durham Chapel Hill Jewish Federation, the Voice for Israel, and other non-Jewish groups as explain how the Durham City Council succumbed to radical group efforts to support a BDS petition and statement that demanded that the city boycott any future exchange programs associated with Israel and Durham police, that made false and inflammatory claims that Israel international expertise is directly linked to bias and racism in the Durham Police Department, that attempted to link Israel to white supremacy and other forms of hate speech in the U.S., that insinuated that Israel teaches American police to attack minorities in our country, and that problems in U.S. policing are due to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Claims that violence due to implicit or explicit racism in Durham is caused by Israel in any way are false. There's absolutely no proof that any Israeli sharing is linked to any violence or discrimination of any community of color. While violence is a serious public health issue in Durham, facts show the city has had no increase in crime from 2012 onward, despite large population increases. Moreover, there was a 50% decrease in criminal homicides from 2016 to 2017. Police complaints against citizens' complaints against police have decreased, and as noted in the paper several days ago, violent crime in Durham is down 28% in the first 6 months of this year. Many of these tremendous achievements are due to the Durham Police Chief C.J. Davis and the men and women of the Durham Police Department. Why then did Durham need to spend hundreds of hours of time examining a petition and passing an ultimate statement singling out Israel? There's no proof that any police brutality in the U.S. is linked to any training in Israel. Moreover, here we discovered Chief Davis's letter to the Durham Council, written several weeks before the City Council vote, actually praising her training, having nothing to do with terrorism, but having to do with leadership and helping understand how to deal with homelessness and other crises affecting communities. Thus, comments and actions emanating from the Durham City Council's willingness to accept lies that stigmatize Israel were insulting and only serve to demonize Israel and the Jewish people. You will hear how the mainstream Jewish community mobilized the Durham City Council, not because our opinions, our leadership, or our institutions were ever sought out for comment, but because we recognized quickly that actions by the Council to demonize Israel were bad for the Jewish community, bad for Durham, and not based on facts. Such decisions are, in fact, anti-democratic when they're made behind closed doors, using acknowledged lies, and seek to change the truth of the facts to suit narrow-minded purposes. These facts were pointed out to the Council by virtually all mainstream Jewish leaders, institutions, and rabbis before their votes on the resolution that singled out Israel. Several of us met with the mayor shortly before the votes when we heard about this happening in the City Council. We found out that all Durham City Council members, except the mayor, already voiced support for the resolution singling Israel months before our meeting. Today's forum is designed to openly let our community know these facts about the City Council's vote that singled out only one country in the world, the Jewish state of Israel, and its adverse impact on our community that have reverberated nationally and internationally. finally, we'll hear what we're doing to help remedy the situation. When you hear from community leaders, ask yourself some of the following questions. Did the Durham City Council really believe that in 2018 it was not productive for the Durham police to learn about leading strategies and training from Israel and the only country in the world? Did the City Council actually review any of the course curricula of training in Israel that other police chiefs in the U.S. have obtained? Did the City Council systematically inquire from dozens of police chiefs around the United States who have participated in these changes about how they may have benefited? Since the police chief of Durham sent a glowing letter to the council and other police chiefs across the United States did the same, why did they not choose to believe their own police? Do Durham City Council members really believe, as the petitioners allege, that the Anti-Defamation League and other Jewish organizations in Israel are complicit in police brutality against minorities in the United States? Does the council believe that opening up the local and subsequent international community to a 2-hour litany of angry, hateful, anti-Jewish state rhetoric on TV was appropriate for municipal governance? Does the council realize that baseless anti-Israel allegations endorsed by many, regardless of intent, directly encourages racial antagonism and ultimately supports more radical views linked to anti-Semitism? Ultimately, the real question is, why did the City Council spend hundreds of hours looking at a resolution and adopting a statement about an issue that singled out only one country on the planet, Israel? Have they ever done anything remotely similar, taking up an issue that's not real in the city and that singles out only one country? The Jewish tradition says that we should ask good questions. Hope these introductory comments and questions stimulate further insight into reasons why today's forum is necessary and why so many people care about the discriminatory actions by the City Council towards Israel, mainstream Jewish organizations, and others who care about both. Thank you.
Rocamora, President of the Durham Chapel Hill Jewish Federation.
Thanks to everybody being here. We appreciate it. I think today is to learn about what happened and to try to figure out where we go from here. And Adam said we had to ask questions. And so that's what I did with regard to the statement. It was early March before I first even heard about the petition. As president of the Federation, you would think I might have heard about it before then. It was a week before the statement was issued, or was going to be discussed, that I heard about the statement. At that time, Jill Madsen, CEO, sent a letter to the mayor expressing our concern. We still got no results. So then we went to the hearing, or the meeting, and after the statement was passed, while I was upset and offended that Israel was mentioned, I thought to myself, well, at least Israel was treated the same as all other foreign countries. The statement prevented military-style training with any foreign country, and many of us in the Jewish community, as well as the broader community, probably support Durham police not engaging in military-style training. However, the next day, I read articles from the political right, the political left, the political center, about how the statement went much further than what I thought. I then read the statement a little bit more carefully, with a critical eye, and came to the conclusion that the statement did treat Israel in a way that is different than any other country. I wrote an editorial in the Durham Herald that outlined my reasoning. The editorial went something like this. I'm writing to clear up some confusion about the statement by the Durham City Council on international police exchanges that was unanimously passed on April 16, 2016, and to call for revision or repeal of the statement. The pertinent part of the statement, which appears to be causing the confusion, is as follows. Quote, the Durham City Council appreciates receipt of the memo dated April 4, 2018 from Chief C.J. Davis to City Manager Tom Bonfield, stating that there has been no effort while I have served as Chief of Police to initiate or participate in any exchange to Israel, nor do I have any intention to do so. The next sentence is the critical one. The Durham City Council endorses this statement by Chief Davis and affirms as policy that the Durham Police Department will not engage in such exchanges. What does such exchange refer to? It can only refer to any exchange with Israel. The statement goes on in the next paragraph to state the Council opposes international exchanges with any country in which Durham officers receive military-style training, since such exchanges do not support the kind of policing we want to have in the city of Durham. So there's two sentences, there's two statements. And while it's confusing and not that clear, I was curious as to what was the intent. I think you have to read it as written. And so it does single out Israel, and that's offensive. It is a sentence that states that they will not engage in any such exchanges with Israel that causes the problem. While Durham police are prevented from participating in military-style training with any foreign country, including Israel, they are only prevented from police exchanges of other types, specifically with Israel. That does single out Israel from the rest of the world. If that's not the intent, then why was the sentence even in there? If that wasn't the intent, there would be no reason to have that sentence or that statement about any such exchanges. But sometimes when you write, I'm a lawyer, we don't always write as clearly as we think we do. And so I thought, well, let's ask Mayor Schul what was the intention. So we met with Mayor, and he confirmed that my understanding of the statement was correct. I asked him if the statement was to prevent police exchanges with only Israel and to prevent military-style training with any other country, with all foreign countries. While I was hoping the answer would be no, that I was misreading the statement, Mayor Schul said yes. The question, of course, why did the City Council go further in preventing all exchanges by the police with just Israel? Mayor Schul has yet to let me know that my understanding is incorrect. Recently, there was another editorial in the Herald Sun, which Mayor Schul was asked the question, if you and the City Council sit down in the future to consider international exchanges for Durham officers, and you consider which countries might be candidates for training, will Israel be considered in any way differently than any other country in which Durham officers might receive military-style training? And Mayor Schul answered no. I agree with that. I believe that is to be true and correct. I recently posed a slightly different question to the mayor and haven't gotten a response yet. My question was this: if in the future the council decides and there is value in offering international training with Durham police officers of any sort other than military-style training, would the option for training with Israel be identical to the option for all other countries? Well, I haven't heard back. Based on my previous conversations, I suspect the answer would be no. There would be no option for Durham police training with Israel. It is that singling out of Israel that makes the statement have a different meaning than what others have said. Military-style training is certainly within the police chiefs and the council's purview. Singling out no training with Israel is not. Thank you.
Once Jill got done talking, I was just going to go home because she was so awesome, but I decided to stay. My children have seen me in a tie 2 times. I'm a speech therapist. I play with children on the ground all day. The first time I wore a tie, my daughter was 4 years old, and she said, "Daddy, you look like a prince." So I put on my tie today, and I strutted downstairs, and I said, "Charlotte, how does Daddy look?" And she looked at me, and she goes, "Doesn't work." So I apologize about the tie. I wanted to share one more thing briefly. I grew up with a very severe stutter, and it dogged me my whole life until I was about 23 years old. I like to say this every time I talk because it makes it easier for me to talk. And if you hear any good stuttering today, well, it's still inside me, but just wanted to share that. Okay. In April of 2018, Durham, North Carolina, became the first city in the United States of America to boycott police trainings with Israel. Israel's the only Jewish majority country on the planet. No other countries were singled out by name. Voice of Israel has made about 40 public records requests, trying to figure out exactly what happened. A lot of what I share today is from those public records requests. As explained by City Council member Jillian Johnson, the council passed a statement affirming a city policy against police exchanges with Israel. Johnson described this as the Israel Resolution. From the public records, I found an email that she sent to a president of a synagogue, and she referred to it as the Israel Resolution. But it's not surprising for Jillian Johnson. In 2015, one of the first things she did when she got elected to the Durham City Council, she requested from the finance department Durham's investment portfolio. And who did she send it to? Jewish Voice for Peace, who boycott Israel. And her note said, "Y'all can use this. It might help you boycott Israel." And they wrote back, "Thanks, Jilly." I know, it's gross, right?
Yeah.
It is gross. A lot of people have asked, how did Durham come to discriminate against Israel and the Jewish people? 11 local rabbis explained it best. They said it was a punch in the gut, and it was. Public records indicate that by November of 2017, every member of the Durham City Council, except the mayor, had signed a hateful anti-Israel petition circulated by this group calling it Jewish Voice for Peace. JVP, as they are known, support boycotting Israel. They do not support a two-state solution. History reminds us that nothing is good or peaceful about boycotting Jews. Several versions of the anti-Israel petition allege that Israeli training, quote, helps the police terrorize Black and brown communities here in the U.S. This is reminiscent of those who accuse Jews of baking children into our matzah. It feels like a blood libel. These anti-Israel lobbyists sent an email to the Durham City Council urging them to boycott Israel, stating, quote, policing in the U.S. has a long history of violence against Black and brown communities. Training police in Israel exasperates this ongoing harm. 6 out of 7 Durham City Council members signed the petition. The City Council then chose to partner with these activists. On April 5th, the City Council held a work session where they allowed anti-Israel activists to present this petition. At the session, the council was told by one of Jillian Johnson's donors, quote, Israel is the last country in the world to respect human rights. I was sitting next to her. The donor continued, we already have a race issue in this country. Could you imagine if these people, she meant the Durham police, could you imagine if these people go to Israel? They're going to come back as killers. So you have a small group of fringe Jews telling our local government that Jewish people are going to train police officers to terrorize people of color. Again, it's kind of gross, right?
Yes.
Very gross. These anti-Israel activists were allowed to speak to the city council on April 5th, even though they had missed the 10-day sign-up period. Now, going through the public records, you saw that these activists were worried that they might miss their summer vacations. So what did Mayor Schul do? He waived the 10-day sign-up period. Mayor Schul then contacted us, the mainstream Jewish community, sometime around April 3rd, and gave us 2 days to prepare. He didn't give us time to organize. He gave us 2 days. Using public records requests, we now know that Mayor Schul wrote the anti-Israel compromise statement 12 hours earlier. Oh, by the way, Mark Anthony Middleton said that this policy statement was a compromise, the Jewish Voice for Peace. It's on video. We've got it on our website. So, using public records, we know that Mayor Schul wrote this anti-Israel compromise statement 12 hours before the April 5th work session even began. In other words, the City Council wrote this anti-Israel policy before allowing or hearing a single minute of public discussion. This is in direct opposition to the Council's Code of Ethics, which grants, quote, every citizen a fair and impartial hearing on any matter which may be heard before the public official. Think about how corrupt this is. The mayor and council made their anti-Israel decision before allowing the mainstream Jewish community to speak. To make matters even worse, we now know that Mayor Schul emailed this policy statement to the entire city council and city manager from his personal email account to their personal email accounts. Now, why might somebody do that? Well, the Herald Sun and other media sources monitor the public folder. If the policy statement isn't in the public folder, then the media can't read it. The North Carolina general statute that the City Council is expected to follow says, quote, the best practice is to avoid using personal resources, including private email accounts, for public business. Our investigation has found widespread use of personal email by the City Council to conduct public business. Bob Gottman will discuss this very soon. On April 16th, the Durham City Council put Israel and the Jewish people on trial for 2 hours. I was there, and again, it was gross. It felt like they put my religion and my faith on trial. Durham created a safe space for speaker after speaker to spew anti-Israel hate. One speaker even stood up and told the City Council that Jews attend a synagogue of Satan. The mainstream Jewish community was also out in force that night. Rabbi Zalman Blumen told the council, and we cheered him for it. My phone has been ringing nonstop over the last week from young adults. They live here, they feel unsafe, they feel marginalized. They feel as if for some reason they've been singled out. We pleaded with the City Council not to single out Israel. Instead, each council member took their turn attacking Israel and then voted to boycott police training only with Israel, just like Jewish Voice for Peace had told them to do. Councilperson Middleton actually said during this meeting he didn't understand why the mayor wanted to respond at all to the anti-Israel activists. But then Middleton added, but when you got more money and you're better organized and it's a sexier issue, I guess you get our attention. Yeah, I think love of Israel is pretty sexy. Not me, of course, but I mean in general. But okay. Last thing, getting the public records from Durham has been very challenging. While Durham is very good and very efficient at fast-tracking anti-Israel policy, they are incredibly unorganized and at times hostile towards public records requests. It's a mess. For example, I requested a copy of Mayor Schul's meeting schedule so we can know who he's met with. This is common, this is normal, everybody does it. Jewish Voice for Peace has bragged they have incredible access to the city council. So we want to know who the mayor has met with. 122 days later, and I don't have it. 122 days later, and Mayor Schul can't even print his calendar to show us who he has met with. That is striking. We requested public records that reside in city council person Dadrina Freeman's personal account. Freeman responded by asking the city attorney if she could blacken out part of the public record. The city council attorney said, no, you can't do that. Now we know this because we have a public records request, so we can see what they're saying. When we finally did get Dadrina Freeman's emails, we saw that the People's Alliance, a powerful local political organization whose endorsements are highly sought after, the People's Alliance is now asking the City Council to turn their anti-Israel statement into a resolution that would be binding on the city manager and police. Freeman's instinct to blacken out any part of this public record is troubling. Very last thing I'm going to say, there's so much to share. Around January 4th, Jewish Voice for Peace made a huge public records request to the city. 20 years. I joked with the city attorney, I know you think I'm a pain in the butt, but I didn't ask for 20 years of information. It's been over 100 days, and we can't get a copy of what Jewish Voice for Peace requested. Part of our injury is that we, the mainstream Jewish community, should have access to the same information that people who attack Israel have access to. Thank you very much.
Dr. Bob Gutman, co-chair of this group.
Thank you, Marcia. It has not been entirely clear to some people what this symposium is for. It's not about the strong difference between most of us and the anti-Zionist group, which usually talks about the context of the Palestine-Israel conflict. Our issue today is that while they and others promulgated the lies, it is our present and deep concern that the council, in a great hurry, doing no research, and often using secrecy, readily accepted the basic idea that you've already heard about. The foundational lie is and was that the Israeli police taught and teach American police to act in terror against black and brown members of our community or in our country. Without that fabrication, there would not have been a council statement. That was a necessary foundational element. It essentially boycotts police training with Israel and made us feel unwelcome. The original information given to the council members, which I have right here, is an enormous document, very fine print, much of it 8 font or 10 font, filled with the most outrageous language I can print it for you. Among the things that this says is exchanges with Israel militarize U.S. police forces that train in Israel, and this helps training to terrorize black and brown communities in the United States. It then goes on to say, and this is amazing, the police exchanges that they're talking about provided a platform for Israel to teach American police, and I'm quoting now, the worst practices, including extrajudicial executions, shoot-to-kill policies, racial profiling, mass spying and surveillance, deportation and detention, and violent suppression of political dissent.
That's right.
Chief C.J. Davis, who I hope will be here for the reception, and she said she might, recognized immediately that the council was headed in the wrong direction in its plans that led to delegitimization of both Israel and this is just as important, the education that she had received in her time in Atlanta. She wrote a very substantial letter to the council, offering to tell them the truth about these claims from her long experience. Her letter reported the opposite of these kinds of claims and included this comment: "My training experience in Israel has nothing to do with terrorism, military tactics, or the use of or exposure to military equipment. My specific exchange was based on developing leadership academies, leadership principles, and building community and police relations with the growing homeless population of the United States. The Atlanta Police Leadership Institute was and is an assigned project under my leadership. It is a well-regarded curriculum designed to groom bright police leaders of tomorrow. It has no police operations component, quite the opposite of the comments here." My comment: a remarkable and frankly terrible irony has just arisen. Only days ago, Mayor Schul graciously, correctly, and publicly praised Chief Davis for, quote, "her success in reducing violent crime by 28%. Even more striking and especially remarkable is the 80% reduction in complaints about the police department attributed to her leadership. Although he praised Chief Davis's effectiveness, he ignored her early request to give detailed advice to the council before it passed the statement. A single solitary sentence from Chief Davis's letter was extracted from the creation of the statement. You've already heard it. There's been no effort and so forth. But the Israel name is in the statement as a result of slipping in that single solitary sentence. This inclusion, as well as the exclusion of the bulk of her letter, was deliberate, and according to their responses to us when we asked, is irrevocable. They're not going to change their mind. The inclusion has allowed the wide dissemination of reports that Durham has boycotted Israel. Councilperson Julian Johnson, the recognized leader of this attack, even refers, as you already heard, to this statement as the Israel resolution. No purpose is served to have Israel singled out in the statement, other than to support the claims of the petitioners that Israel police are culpable for evil doing. This is a huge insult, as well as an error. We have heard the response to this comment, which incorrectly states that Israel has been the only foreign country involved in police training, but there's vast evidence, had they done their research, that there are plenty of other countries that do that. The resulting city council statement wounds both the police and our sense of warm human relations in the city which we have been enjoying. In fact, it is the modern equivalent of the ancient blood libel. These lies led to government action that purposely discriminated against us. We asked them to remove the discriminatory statements. We were rebuffed and ignored. We pointed out that they needed only a simple statement about their preference for policing. Big deal. Therefore, we have appealed to the Human Relations Commission, who, after hearing a brief presentation by us featuring testimony about the harm that we felt, agreed to hear our concerns in detail. The HRC has set up an ad hoc committee to research our injury. We have collected a great deal of important information and believe that given adequate time to make our case, we will be heard with an open mind. Our request for the HRC was fairly detailed, and when and if we are given adequate time to present our concerns to an open hearing or to a hearing, we will include notation of the mayor's bending of rules to fast track, as Peter pointed out, the lack of any research, the unwillingness to talk to our leadership ahead of time or even during, the prevarications which I've already summarized, and the comments about what anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism really are. We're going to ask them to engage in conversations with the council that should lead to more research, and we're going to ask that they ask the council to do more research. Assuming that the HRC agrees with the thrust of our concerns, we will then ask them to issue a recommendation that the City Council statement should be rescinded. Finally, we know that the petitioners will regale us with stories of military activities in Israel. That's not the point. We know also of their disdain for Israel. But it is not our purpose to argue about that. The present discussion is about the harm done to us by the Council's acceptance of an unacceptable set of falsehoods. It comes from the city government passing a law that is discriminatory and then allowing the petitioners to boast around the country, as they're already doing, that Durham passed a boycott against Israel. The HRC has formed a subcommittee, and we are in the process of trying to learn their proposed methods. I'd like to take now the next minute to introduce a very new and very good friend of mine, Bishop Ronald Godbee, a nationally recognized leader in Christian fellowship and presiding prelate of the National River Fellowship of Churches and pastor of the Durham River Church, which I've had the honor and pleasure of visiting a couple of times, has over 1,000 members. Bishop Godbee is the author of a book titled Why Leaders Fail. He is described as a transformative leader and model of the passion of worship and love for all peoples. Before assuming religious leadership, he was a police sergeant who attended these exchanges just as Chief Davis did. Bishop Godbee.
I want to personally thank the esteemed bodies represented that have exhibited the care and courage to make today possible. I am humbled and honored to weigh in on this conversation. As Dr. Goodman said, my name is Ronald Godbee, and I serve as the lead pastor of the River Church in Durham, and I serve as the presiding bishop of the River Fellowship International. The city of Durham is declared to be the city of medicine, which should not be a slogan that reflects the pure genius of its medical institutions alone, but it should reflect the genius of its leadership's ability to lead us towards being a city that is a place of healing for all people. Durham is a microcosm of the melting pot that America is. I am a native of Detroit, Michigan, but I moved my wife and 3 children to a foreign land called Durham 7 years ago. It's amazing how we don't see domestic moves as migrations, but in essence they are. When you pack up and leave everything that you know and love to move to another place, it takes courage and determination that not everyone is willing to exercise. Whatever the reason for a move, it is often underpinned with hopes, dreams, and aspirations that drive the decision. When I moved my family here, I trusted that Durham would be just what it said it would be, a place of healing. As a stakeholder in the community, I expect the leadership of this city that I've come to love to carry out the mantra that it espouses. I, along with many whom I represent, feel violated and threatened by any leader that spews racially divisive rhetoric that undermines the racial harmony and healing for the citizens that they are called to serve. As a leader, I am keenly aware that our statements hold great value. They should never be judged by our intent alone, but by the outcomes of the statements that are made. Our intent may have the purest motives, but if our outcomes do not align with our motives, we should be the first to retract or apologize for the statements made. If any leader's statements has this level of negative impact on a community and there is no retraction, it speaks directly to the motives, the intention, and character of the leader. If I step on your shoes and I didn't mean to, I simply apologize and say I'm sorry. If I step on your shoe and I meant to, I don't prepare an apology. I prepare for a fight. Intentions are known by the apology or by the aggression to defend the stance that the leader has made. When any population of people in our city is radically affected by the words of one of its leaders, it is incumbent that this leader retract or apologize and not double down on their actions. As an ex-police sergeant, now community leader, I want the department of my city to be equipped with every skill set and resource available to them. As we all know, Durham is rapidly growing, and from one angle, growth is exciting to watch. But from another angle, our police department must realize all of the negative nuances that come with it. It would behoove any leader of any growing city and police agency to gather and garner resources to equip their officers for the challenges that have come with the demands of growth. I commend and applaud Chief Davis for being proactive in this area. If I were still an officer, I would be privileged to work under her leadership. For the leaders of our great city to vilify a proposed program and demonize a people based upon the location of where a program is being offered is an egregious use of power and is not reflective of what we expect from those who lead this city called Durham, which we know as the city of medicine. This is not a prescription that heals, but it truly is one that kills. Any doctor having written such a prescription would be immediately called to task. And so why shouldn't our council persons? My brother served as the 40th Chief of Police in the wonderful city of Detroit, and this program, of which has been inappropriately categorized, is a very well-respected program in policing. To make a blanket assertion without any, for instance, or empirical data to substantiate such claim should be unacceptable for any reasonable human being. Officers obviously don't need to travel beyond their own agencies to learn negative policing habits. If our concern is with any, it should be with the policies and procedures that allow the threshold of a department's when to shoot policy to be minimalized by the intent of fear for the officer's life alone. Our focus should be on police academies that create aggressive behaviors in officers and release them amongst the citizens of America to occupy their communities and not protect their communities. As a leader, it is vitally important to me to qualify leadership by the patterns and precepts that it establishes, not just for a polarized group, but leadership should be measured by its ability to serve all who are a part of this wonderful city. We cannot afford for this seed of discord and division to be planted, as it will only allow to grow a resting place for the buzzards of the air to come and lodge and devour our great city. We can live together as the wise, or we can perish together as fools. We have a wonderful opportunity here, and that is to heal the hurts of this great city, to hold our leadership to a standard that reflects the excellence of a city that we all seek to live in, work in, relax in, and even serve in. I pray from this moment that we are inspired to adopt a lexicon that speaks on behalf of all of its citizens. We can no longer speak from our silos to our bases to sustain our seats or to secure our votes, but we must lead because we love people. I've been profoundly impacted as I've talked with citizens of Durham who have been hurt by this issue. If our motives were pure, an apology to our Jewish brothers and sisters is demanded. I count it a privilege and an honor to be here today because I represent someone that is intimately involved and connected in these issues. I feel your plight and I feel your pain. I sympathize and empathize with you and count it a distinct privilege and honor to be in this place to share a platform with men and women of whom I am least. But your very willingness to allow me to stand in this place is the very reason why we need to come together as majority groups to make sure that these divisive tactics that are being leveraged against each of us is never allowed in the borders and the boundaries of Durham ever again. I would ask that you would please continue to call upon us so that we can stand with you and walk with you through these moments so that we can show that there is a people that may not look like you, but there are people who share the same plight as you. Thank you so much for your time.
So much, Bishop Godbee, and please join me in thanking all of the panelists for sharing their information. While we're doing that, a couple of announcements that I can make. There are some clipboards on the table to my left. If you would like to leave your email so that you can be notified of updates of what is going on with this particular situation or future programs for Voice for Israel, please, before you leave, go ahead and put your email and your name on the clipboards. Also, I hope you saw a flyer when you came in that is also on the table to my left, and if not, you can please pick one up. There's a wonderful program coming on October 14th to Meredith College. It is being co-sponsored by Stand With Us and the Voice for Israel, and it's called Untold Stories of IDF Soldiers. There will be a young male and a young female who are serving in the Israeli army. It is not a political talk. They're going to talk about their personal experiences in required conscription and what it is like for them to serve in the army. Do you have any questions yet? Okay, this is a question for Adam. How did the JVP pick Durham?
Notice in my comments I did not single out any organization. The groups that brought together for the actions were a number of different coalitions in Durham who started with a questionnaire that went to politicians that were running for office back in September of 2017. And many of them signed something that was not the same thing as the larger petition that went out to the community that was assembled, which was different than what was sent into the city council, which was different than ultimately the statement. We discovered all of this through efforts by Peter and others to accumulate records of requests. And Durham is not unique in terms of its the dialogue and the questions and the difficulties that communities wrestle with around the country as it relates to policies or actions by Israel, as it is with policies and actions by any elected government in the United States, I might say, so that we shouldn't think that there's something unique and different here. What's unique and different is how the city council responded. One looks at the city council and other communities in the country who then approached established Jewish leadership, and they saw, and you see a different response. So I don't think there's anything really unique about those who are proposing these elements, but what we are really talking about today is really the actions of the city council.
Thank you, Adam. We have a question for Larry. The council is democratically elected. Many Durhamites are against the council position. Why not a public petition?
Well, why not a public petition? I guess we could. I mean, the idea is to hopefully have city council recognize their errors and revise the statement. If they want to oppose military style training, that's fine. But let's take out the word Israel and the fact that Israel, you can't do any police exchanges with Israel of any sort. It's not needed. The police chief wasn't planning on doing anything. And this seems mostly gratuitous since there was no exchanges planned in the current regime or in the future. So I don't understand. But anyhow, I mean, if we wanted to organize a position, you could. But that's not part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to heal. Reverend said.
Okay, here's a question for anyone that would like to answer. Is there a legal option for getting the resolution with the city council?
I ought to let the lawyer answer this question, and I'm going to turn it over to him. We have heard from some outside groups that there might be. We actually have put in a letter to the federal human rights division, asking them to look at what happened here. People have asked, doesn't the law passed by the North Carolina legislature and signed by the governor prohibiting boycotts cover this issue? The answer actually is no, because of the way it's worded. It was only aimed at commercial activities, not at governmental activities. So we don't think we have much leverage in that respect. I am getting phone calls from a national pro-Israel organization that went roughly like this. I can't tell you who's calling, but I know a lawyer. And he's going to probably call you and ask you some questions soon. That's all I know. But if you'll put your email there, we'll let you know what happens next.
I have also heard from someone that they said if they could get a lawyer local to co-counsel with them, that they wanted to do something as well. But I do estate planning.
Again, this is a three-part question. What efforts are being made to meet with individual council members? When are the council members up for re-election? How can we recruit some mainstream Jewish candidates to run for office?
Many of us met with the council before the resolution was passed, before the statement was passed. As you've heard, that went nowhere. Many of us have met with the mayor after it was passed. He has hinted that he's so tired of hearing from us that he might always say no. But that if we stop calling him, he might say yes. But that was just a hint. As far as, what was the next question, elections? Yes, we would certainly like to see elections come up. The principal advocate on the council, Jillian Johnson, who, by the way, as Peter just pointed out to me, has a friend in JVP, and that might be part of the answer to the question that was asked of Adam, is running in 2019. She's backed by a very, very strong political action committee, and it'll be difficult. It'll be difficult. I think that if we can get a very strong statement from the HRC, that might help. I hope that is helpful. Thank you.
We're going to let the speech therapist say something between the doctor and the lawyer here. So, I like to stand. One of our board members, Mike Ross, Dr. Mike Ross, the nicest man you're ever going to meet. He contacted Jillian Johnson, like we all have, and sent her a letter about her foreign policy, and she wrote him back in the public folder, I see no benefit to talk to you about foreign policy. And my response back was, well, why are you setting foreign policy if you don't want to talk about it? You know, Durham, North Carolina was targeted by Jewish Voice for Peace because of Jillian Johnson. She's a long-time anti-Israel activist. Just Google her. Don't take my word for it. Just Google Jillian Johnson in Israel and go see her record.
Has there been consideration of extending North Carolina state law punishing corporations boycotting Israel to local governments? For Dr. Godbee.
It was hard enough getting the first one through. But yes, of course, we always consider things like that. We've been in touch with the national organization called the Israel Project, and they were helping steer us through the complicated mechanisms of getting the law passed in the state legislature. And they claim that the law passed here is one of the strongest in the nation, but it's really hard to cover every contingency. Thank you.
I want to say one thing related to that previous question, which is lest we forget those who hold influence in Durham. We, subsequent to the vote, we were actually having conversations with the City Convention Bureau, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the economic, those who really understand that this is bad for Durham. They understand that Israeli companies are hesitant now about relocating here, that people who are considering moving into Durham, which is one of the fastest growing and most diverse communities in the country, Jewish people maybe are thinking twice about this. When anti-Semitic placards show up on Duke campuses and Durham community within 2 weeks of this vote, it gives us pause for concern for many people. So the key really is to continue to educate and to continue to advocate for doing the right thing. Take a one-sentence statement out of the statement. That one sentence was 180 degrees opposite from what Chief Davis intended and what she wrote. It was gross that they took her statement and turned it around to indicate as if she was in support. That needs to stop and change. And the apology is not just to the Jewish community, it's to the Durham Police Force and to Chief Davis.
What is the next step?
My guess is that the intent of the question is what is the next step after the HRC effort? And I just need to say this first. The HRC has no legal power. It's only an organization meant to influence the culture of a community. But that would be a big deal if they really came out strongly in support of our concerns. I will tell you this, and I didn't say it in my remarks, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but 4 members of the HRC were signatories to the petition. The reason I didn't say that is that I don't want to lose the friendship of the 2 leaders of the HRC who until 7 minutes ago were here. I'm trying to explore that further. I have a friend of hers and of mine who's going to ask her how in the world did that happen. But we really do think we have enough information to, if they have an open mind, if they allow hearings, to be able to persuade them to say something useful. After that, I don't know. I really don't know. Using the federal government or the state government has been proffered as a possibility, and we are waiting to hear from a couple of law firms about that. When I read what's available to me with my doctor eye, my lawyer eye, my dad's a lawyer. Today, by the way, is his 108th birthday. I don't see a path forward in using the state or federal governments, but I am assured that competent law firms are looking very seriously at it. Thank you.
The next step, in a way, is to get a better relationship with the council. They didn't talk to the mainstream groups. They talked to others. They didn't consult the Federation. One council member, when I asked him about the statement, said this isn't about Israel. Well, it is about Israel. We have to all agree to that part of it, whether it's good, bad, or whether you agree, it's still about Israel. And so we need to talk to the council members. When we met with Mayor Schul, a group of Jewish leaders from the various synagogues, Lerner, we talked about what are our next steps. And our next steps is we need to take the council members out to lunch, take them out to dinner, take them out to breakfast, talk to them about it. Well, that could be as well, but to try to let them know the hurt that they did put upon us, and try to get better relations. And that's sort of what the Federation's sort of next steps are, as well as looking at the HRC and everything else.
I'm so glad that Larry's going to take him out for brunch. And I mean that sincerely. I'm going to keep making public records requests because we're just scratching the surface. I want to share something that Jillian Johnson tweeted. She wrote, "It's okay to make someone feel ashamed for doing something shameful. In fact, it's necessary." Well, Jillian Johnson has shamed Durham. What the action she has taken against the Jewish community is shameful. I'm not interested in shaming her, though. I'm interested in getting the word out more and more. So the public records requests continue, the articles continue, the videos continue, and we have to let other Jewish community know this is going to wash up on your shores. I mean, Dora was an easy target, but and everyone sitting here is working to make sure this doesn't wash up on other people's shores. So we're protecting not only the Jews here, but the Jews out there.
Thank you. I'm going to let Jill address the next two questions that I'm going to combine. So the first part of it is, do you find the low youth turnout to pro-Israel meetings worrisome? And the second question, why do we get a huge turnout for events highlighting attacks on Israel, but much lower turnout for the Durham JCC and Israel Center's programs to highlight Israel's positive contributions to the world?
So I'll start with the second part. I think that depending on what the program is, the turnout varies. Our annual Yom Ha'atzmaut, we had over 300 people at. Yom HaZikaron, we had over 100 people at. So I think that those are important events that happen, similar to all of our other JCC arts and culture programs. We tend to have around 50 people. So there isn't a big difference between if it's an Israeli film or an Israeli cooking class, or if it's a Jewish film or a Jewish cooking class. We tend to draw the same number of people and have really great turnout for some of the bigger events. And the bigger events are definitely intergenerational. I think that's one of the pieces that makes the JCC most unique, is how many different programs that we have that really cover the wide range of gamut. When we hosted a program in collaboration with Stand With Us last year that had a young Palestinian speaking, I would say half the audience was younger than me. And I'm always the one that gets the cheek pinched at different things for being the youngest one in the room. So I think that there's definitely different things that is drawing the younger demographic as well to talk about Israel. We're having a great event in October focused on the Israel Technion, which we encourage a lot of people to come, and we anticipate many younger folks that are in the working in the Triangle that will join us for that. So I think that blends the two together.
It's not a question, it is. One thing that's important to understand, I think, is that what we see in this community is a snapshot. And we think attracting millennials to most anything at times can be difficult. But we should look at what's happening nationally. When the APAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Group, at their annual meeting, there were over 2,000 students, Jewish and non-Jewish, representing leadership across almost every campus in the United States. So these are mainstream Jewish and non-Jewish students coming together. They don't have to agree with everything they're hearing. They can disagree, but they're there, they're engaged. We're treating them with respect and engaging them. On Birthright, thousands of young college students going to Birthright. We want to make a difference in what to do. Give money to Birthright, give money to causes that are supporting us, give money to the Voice for Israel. You know what? We can speak with our wallets as well as with our words.
Don't forget your federation.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Bishop, but just, if you don't mind answering one question. You trained in Israel. Can you share with us just one thing you learned there that you'd like us to know about?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. I'm sorry.
My brother's chief.
Got it. Sorry.
I do have a question for Bishop Godbee, though. How can the Jewish and African American communities work together to make Durham a safe and welcoming place for all?
Thank you for the question. It's extremely important that we recognize the common ground that we share. In any relationship, there's going to be tension and conflict. But the wise person seeks to resolve the tension and conflict by discovering the places that we have in common. We have so much more in common than we do that separates and divides us. We are constantly, again, partners in pain. And if we unite from the common areas that we share, then we can collaborate more often. We have to understand that we're not as different as we believe that we are. And here again is this Kairos moment that gives us an opportunity that from the midst of confusion to find those collaborations. And so in the midst of this most difficult moment, I found a friend. I found a mentor. I found someone that I can look to, that I sit with, and who shares his wisdom with me. And so in these moments, let us allow them to drive us to the point where we discover one another. We're part of the same community, and here is where we discover that. And so it's moments like this that we can build out relationships and that we can be there for one another. And that is what I would submit, and that's what I would say. And so we have to utilize these moments to galvanize us. We're greater together, and it's more of us than it is of them. And so when we recognize that, then we do more to find our common grounds and come together so that we can be greater than they were.
Thank you. He was my mentor. And I just want to say one other thing. He is going with Rabbi Graber to Israel soon.
Thank you. This is a question for Jill. What is the role of systemic white supremacy, and specifically the Trump administration's rise to power with anti-Semitic leaders like Bannon in creating the climate of anti-Semitism that you spoke about?
I think that we can all agree that there have been lots of different forums that have been opened up for people to spout hate, and that becomes more common and more appropriate in some people's perspective. What that calls to me is it just is a bigger platform for us to challenge that rhetoric and really talk about the values we as a Jewish people stand for, which is opposite of that. And standing up for the global community, addressing issues of hate, whether it be towards the Jewish community or our broader community. And I think you see that in the work that lots of the different Jewish organizations are doing in forming collaborations and modeling what Tikkun Olam and Tzedakah are all about.